Something was terribly wrong in New York City. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepped out for what should have been a glamorous evening at the Tribeca Film Festival, the world didn't see a power couple. They saw two people who could barely stand to be in the same room together. The photos told a story that no amount of Sussex spin could hide. Harry looked rattled, uncomfortable, almost trapped. Meghan, meanwhile, wore that familiar camera-ready smile, but her body language screamed tension. The distance between them wasn't just physical. It felt like an emotional chasm had opened up right there on the red carpet. Royal watchers went into overdrive. Was this finally it? Was the Sussex fairy tale crumbling in real time? For years, people had whispered about cracks in the marriage, but Harry and Meghan always managed to deflect with perfectly timed PR moves or bombshell interviews that shifted the narrative. But this time felt different. This time, the mask slipped, and what the world saw underneath was deeply unsettling. Except, what if that's exactly what they wanted you to see? Enter Lady Colin Campbell, royal biographer and someone who knows a thing or two about navigating the treacherous waters of aristocratic dysfunction. Lady C dropped a bombshell theory that flipped the entire narrative on its head. She posted on social media that she was smelling a massive rat. The messages coming from the Sussex camp were so pointed, so deliberate, that she couldn't help but question whether Harry and Meghan were playing everyone for fools. Were they really on the brink of divorce, or were they setting an elaborate trap? Lady C's warning was chilling. She reminded everyone that narcissists don't reveal genuine weakness unless there's something to gain. And Harry and Meghan, whatever else you want to say about them, are masters of media manipulation. They've proven time and again that they know how to control a narrative, how to bait the press, how to position themselves as victims while everyone else looks like the villain. So why would they suddenly let the world see their marriage falling apart unless it served a purpose? The theory sent shockwaves through royal circles. If Lady C was right, then the New York appearance wasn't a moment of genuine marital discord caught on camera. It was theater. It was psychological warfare playing out in public, with Harry as the unwitting pawn and the rest of us as the audience. But the real horror wasn't what happened in New York. It was what Lady C claimed was happening behind closed doors. The manipulation, the control, the way Meghan allegedly presses every one of Harry's buttons to keep him trapped in a cycle of confusion and dependency. And it was about to get so much darker than anyone imagined. Lady Colin Campbell wasn't buying what the Sussexes were selling, and she wanted the world to know it. Her social media post didn't just raise eyebrows, it set off alarm bells for anyone who understood the psychology of manipulation. She posed a question that cut right to the heart of the matter. Can anyone who actually understands how dark personalities function seriously believe that a couple so practiced in media manipulation would reveal serious divisions between themselves unless it was in their worldly interest to do so? That question hung in the air like a guillotine. Because Lady C wasn't just throwing out random speculation. She was speaking from 5 decades of experience watching narcissists operate up close. She'd lived it, she'd survived it, and now she was watching Harry and Meghan deploy the same tactics she'd seen destroy people from the inside out. The warning was stark. Harry and Meghan might be setting everyone up for yet another one of their schemes. The supposed marital discord, the uncomfortable body language, the carefully leaked stories about how bad things had gotten between them, all of it could be part of a calculated game. But to what end? That's where things got truly disturbing. Lady C believed the Sussexes were creating a massive diversion. They needed to shift attention away from their mounting failures. The Netflix projects that bombed, the Spotify deal that imploded, the constant public demands for clarity about their children's identity and legitimacy. Every time the pressure built to unbearable levels, Harry and Meghan pulled off some dramatic stunt that changed the conversation entirely. And this time, the stunt was making everyone believe their marriage was collapsing. Think about it. For weeks, the media had been hammering them about their professional disasters and the growing questions about Archie and Lilibet. Then suddenly, boom, New York happens. Harry looks miserable. Meghan looks defiant. And just like that, everyone's talking about divorce instead of the uncomfortable questions the Sussexes refused to answer. But Lady C went even further. She suggested that maybe, just maybe, this whole performance served an even darker purpose. By appearing to be at odds with each other publicly, they could set up a narrative where Meghan looks like the victim of Harry's instability, or where Harry looks like the victim of Meghan's ambition. Either way, they control the story. Either way, the royal family ends up looking like the bad guys for not supporting them through their struggles. The brilliance of it was almost sickening. If they were playing this game and Lady C was convinced they were, then they'd successfully weaponize their own dysfunction. They'd turn their toxic dynamic into content, into sympathy, into another reason for the public to feel sorry for them instead of holding them accountable. But the real nightmare wasn't the public manipulation. It was what Lady C claimed Meghan was doing to Harry when the cameras weren't rolling. Lady Colin Campbell didn't just theorize about manipulation. She'd lived through it. Her own mother had been a master of the dark arts of narcissistic control, and watching Meghan operate triggered memories that were both painful and illuminating. Lady C saw the patterns. She recognized the tactics. and what she described was absolutely chilling. According to Lady C, Meghan deploys a specific strategy before public events, one designed to rattle Harry while positioning herself for a flawless performance. She whips herself into a frenzy by picking fights, creating chaos, and pushing every emotional button Harry has. By the time they walk out the door, Harry's a basket case, and Meghan's in full performance mode, ready to shine while he crumbles beside her. Lady C had watched her own mother do this exact thing. Right before they'd leave for some important social function, her mother would manufacture an argument, create drama out of nothing, and work herself into an emotional state that left everyone around her devastated. Then she'd walk into the event like royalty, completely composed, while her family arrived shattered and struggling to keep it together. The comparison was disturbing because it fit so perfectly with what the world had witnessed in New York. Harry looked genuinely distressed, genuinely uncomfortable. That wasn't acting. That was real trauma playing out in real time. But Meghan, she was camera ready, composed, performing. The contrast was jarring, and now Lady C was suggesting it was entirely by design. This wasn't just about public appearances, though. Lady C believed Meghan's manipulation ran far deeper, infiltrating every aspect of Harry's life and keeping him in a constant state of emotional chaos. The relationship, according to insiders Lady C spoke with, was perpetually rocky, perpetually unstable. One minute things were fine, the next minute they were terrible, and 5 minutes after that it was as if nothing had ever happened. That constant emotional whiplash is textbook narcissistic abuse. It keeps the victim off balance, never quite sure what's real, never quite able to trust their own perception of reality. Harry would be living in a state of perpetual confusion, always trying to figure out what he did wrong, always trying to fix something that was broken by design. Lady C emphasized that in these dynamics, the more dominant partner sets the agenda, and in the Sussex marriage, that dominant partner was undoubtedly Meghan. Harry, despite being a prince, despite his military service, despite everything he'd accomplished, was the weaker personality in this relationship. He was using his intelligence against himself, rationalizing Meghan's behavior, making excuses for the chaos, convincing himself that if he just tried harder, everything would be okay. But it would never be okay, because the chaos wasn't a bug in the system, it was the system itself. And according to Lady C, things were about to get even more twisted when Meghan decided to cosplay as Harry's dead mother. When Meghan Markle stepped out at Paris Fashion Week, the world collectively gasped. It wasn't just about the Balenciaga show or the awkward continental kiss she fumbled with the designer. It was about what happened afterward. Meghan posted an Instagram reel that showed her wandering through Paris at night, creating deliberate parallels to Princess Diana's final tragic journey in that same city. The optics were horrifying. The implications were even worse. But according to Lady Colin Campbell, this wasn't just tone-deaf celebrity behavior. It was calculated psychological warfare aimed directly at Harry's deepest trauma. Lady C didn't believe Meghan explicitly told Harry she was going to recreate his mother's last moments. That would be too obvious, too cruel, even for someone as manipulative as Meghan allegedly is. Instead, she just did it. She posted the content knowing exactly what comparisons would be drawn, knowing exactly how it would devastate Harry, knowing exactly what buttons she was pressing. And then, in a move that Lady C found particularly insidious, Meghan had Harry come out and defend her. He actually tried to spin the narrative, claiming it wasn't Meghan who was copying Diana. It was the press making those comparisons. The press was the problem, not his wife recreating his mother's final hours in the city where she died. The gaslighting was breathtaking. Harry was essentially being forced to deny reality while the entire world could see exactly what Meghan had done. It was the same tactic they'd used with the racism allegations during the Oprah interview. They made inflammatory claims, received awards for fighting institutional racism within the royal family, and then later tried to pretend they never actually said what everyone heard them say. Lady C believed the Paris stunt served multiple purposes for Meghan. First, when she walked out of the Balenciaga show, she expected paparazzi to follow her. Nobody did. That must have been crushing. She'd been seated in a side aisle, not the central front row position reserved for true A-listers. Anna Wintour might have been nearby, but that was just plausible deniability for what was essentially a very public demotion. So Meghan needed to create a moment that would grab attention, that would force the media to talk about her. And what better way than to invoke Diana? The post was designed to provoke exactly the reaction it got: outrage, shock, endless commentary about how inappropriate and disturbing it was. But here's where the manipulation got truly dark. Lady C suggested Meghan was doing a Martin Bashir on Harry. Just like the disgraced journalist had manipulated Diana by feeding her paranoia about the royal family, Meghan was allegedly feeding Harry's deepest fears, pressing on his trauma, making him believe that history was repeating itself and that only she could protect him from the same fate that befell his mother. And the protection racket was just beginning. Here's where Lady Colin Campbell's theory became truly disturbing. She believed Meghan was playing what she called a wildly triple game with Harry's desperate desire to reconcile with his family. On the surface, Meghan appeared supportive. She encouraged Harry to reach out to his father. She briefed friendly journalists that she wanted peace with the royal family. She positioned herself as the loving wife who just wanted her husband to heal his fractured relationships. But according to Lady C, that was all performance. Behind closed doors, Meghan was allegedly doing everything in her power to make sure reconciliation never actually happened. The game worked like this. Meghan would encourage Harry to pursue peace with his family, knowing she could capitalize on the public perception of being supportive. Then, whenever it looked like real progress might be made, whenever there was actual possibility of Harry bringing the children to England and rebuilding bridges with his father and brother, Meghan would allegedly flip the script entirely. Lady C claimed that Meghan would suddenly transform into the vulnerable victim who needed protection. She'd allegedly tell Harry that she and the children could never be safe in England without proper security. She'd remind him of every perceived slight, every moment of alleged mistreatment, every reason to be paranoid about returning to the United Kingdom. And then came the most chilling part. According to Lady C's sources, Meghan had allegedly been implying to Harry that the royal family was responsible for Diana's death. Not in those exact words, perhaps, but through insinuation, through feeding his paranoia, through suggesting that what happened to his mother could happen to them if they weren't careful. Lady C compared it directly to what Martin Bashir did to Diana. The disgraced journalist had famously manipulated the Princess of Wales by showing her fake bank statements and feeding her paranoid delusions about the royal family plotting against her. Now, allegedly, Meghan was using similar tactics on Harry, pressing every button related to his mother's death, making him believe that returning to England without ironclad security guarantees would put his wife and children in mortal danger. The brilliance of this manipulation, if Lady C was right, was that it allowed Meghan to have everything. She got the public credit for supporting reconciliation. She got to position herself as the reasonable one who just wanted family harmony. She got to paint the royal family as the villains when reconciliation inevitably failed because they wouldn't meet Harry's security demands. And most importantly, she prevented Harry from ever actually going back. She kept him isolated. She kept him dependent. She kept him in California, away from the family members who might help him see what was really happening. The Page 6 briefing that came out shortly after Harry's brief meeting with King Charles perfectly illustrated this strategy. Team Sussex made sure everyone knew Meghan was supporting Harry's reconciliation efforts, that she wanted Charles to spend time with the grandchildren, that she wasn't the obstacle everyone thought she was. But actions spoke louder than words. There's psychological manipulation, and then there's what Lady Colin Campbell alleged Meghan was doing to Harry, implying that the royal family murdered his mother wasn't just cruel, it was the nuclear option. It was weaponizing Harry's deepest trauma, his greatest fear, his most vulnerable psychological wound. Lady C's sources claimed that Meghan had been telling Harry, through careful insinuation and strategic suggestion, that what happened to Diana could happen to them, that history could repeat itself, that if they went back to England without the right protection, without the right guarantees, Meghan could be wiped out just like his mother was. The implications were sickening. Diana's death had shattered Harry as a child. He'd walked behind her coffin at age 12, traumatized beyond measure, forced to grieve in public while the world watched. That wound never healed. Harry had spent decades dealing with the aftermath, struggling with mental health issues, grappling with paranoia about the press, convinced that the same forces that killed his mother were coming for him and anyone he loved. And now, allegedly, his wife was pressing directly on that wound. She was taking his greatest fear and using it as a control mechanism. Lady C called it doing a Martin Bashir, and the comparison was devastatingly accurate. Bashir had gained Diana's trust by feeding her paranoia, by showing her fabricated evidence that people in her inner circle were being paid to spy on her, by convincing her that she was surrounded by enemies. Those manipulations led directly to the infamous Panorama interview, where Diana's mental state was clearly compromised and her judgment fatally flawed. Now Meghan was allegedly deploying the same playbook on Harry. She was making him believe that returning to England meant putting his family in danger. She was convincing him that the institution that had protected generations of royals somehow couldn't or wouldn't protect him and his children. She was painting every security discussion as a matter of life and death. And the most insidious part, she was allegedly making Harry feel like he had to choose between his wife and children's safety and his relationship with his father and brother. If he pushed for reconciliation, if he tried to bring the kids to England, if he accepted the security arrangements that were offered, he'd be risking their lives. He'd be making the same mistakes that allegedly led to his mother's death. The psychological torture of that position was unimaginable. Harry was trapped between his desperate need to heal his family relationships and his paralyzing fear of losing Meghan the way he lost Diana. Every instinct to reconnect with his father was countered by the terrifying suggestion that doing so might get his wife killed. Lady C believed this wasn't accidental. It wasn't Meghan being genuinely fearful. It was calculated psychological warfare designed to keep Harry isolated, dependent, and unable to see clearly. She was adding to his paranoia, feeding his trauma, ensuring that he remained convinced the royal family was the enemy and she was his only ally. and the security obsession became the perfect vehicle for this manipulation. The security battle had become Harry's obsession, and according to Lady Colin Campbell, that was exactly what Meghan wanted. Harry had launched multiple legal challenges against the British government, demanding taxpayer-funded police protection whenever he visited the UK. He'd written letters to the Home Secretary. He'd given interviews claiming he couldn't bring his children to England because they wouldn't be safe. The entire narrative centered on this supposed security crisis. But Lady C wasn't buying it. She believed the security issue was a manufactured excuse, a convenient reason to keep Harry away from his family and prevent the children from ever setting foot on British soil. Here's what didn't make sense. Harry claimed he needed government-funded security to visit England safely, yet the moment he landed in the country, he would automatically receive protection, especially if he stayed at a royal residence, which had been offered to him multiple times. The security apparatus that protects the royal family is one of the most sophisticated in the world. The idea that Harry and his children would somehow be vulnerable while under royal protection was absurd, unless, of course, the point wasn't actually about security at all. Lady C suggested that Meghan didn't want the children going to England for reasons that had nothing to do with safety. The most commented upon subject in correspondence to the palace, according to Lady C's sources, was questions about those children's identity. People wanted clarity. They wanted to see Archie and Lilibet. They wanted proof of the surrogacy rumors put to rest or confirmed. And every time that pressure built to unbearable levels, Harry and Meghan would create a new distraction. The security issue was perfect for this. It allowed them to play the victim card while avoiding the uncomfortable questions about why these children were never seen, why there were so few photos, why the circumstances of their births remained shrouded in mystery and contradiction. The legal battle over security also served another purpose. It kept Harry engaged in conflict with the British establishment. It maintained his sense of grievance. It reinforced the narrative that the royal family didn't care about his safety or the safety of his children. Every denied request, every legal setback, every newspaper article about the security dispute fed Harry's paranoia and justified Meghan's alleged claims that they couldn't go back. Rachel Zane, reportedly one of the world's leading experts on constitutional and legal matters, had allegedly advised Harry to write yet again to the new Home Secretary, demanding a review of his security status. This happened right after Harry's brief reconciliation meeting with King Charles, effectively blowing up any progress that might have been made. The timing was suspicious. Harry finally sees his father after 19 months. The meeting goes well. Charles gives him a photo opportunity. Harry tells reporters his father is doing great. There's a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, the relationship can be repaired. And then boom, new security demands, new legal threats, new reasons why reconciliation can't actually happen. Lady C believed none of this was coincidental. The Page 6 article was a masterclass in shameless spin, and it came directly from Team Sussex. Maureen Callahan, editor-at-large for the New York Post, had direct contact with Meghan's camp, and the briefing she received was stunning in its audacity. The headline alone was enough to make anyone who'd been paying attention choke on their coffee. Humanitarians of the Year, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle ready to strategize a peace deal with the royals. Humanitarians of the Year. Let that sink in for a moment. This was the couple whose Spotify deal had imploded, whose Netflix content had bombed, whose Archwell Foundation's financials raised more questions than answers. But sure, Humanitarians of the Year. The article revealed something far more interesting than the ridiculous headline, though. It showed that Meghan knew she needed to change tactics. The briefing represented a complete 180 from everything she'd done for the past 4 years. Suddenly, she was the supportive wife who wanted Harry to reconcile with his family. She understood they needed the royal family. She recognized the value of their titles and the cash those titles provided. Insiders told Page 6 that Meghan had never held Harry back from his family. In fact, she'd encouraged him to see King Charles during his London visit. She wanted Charles to spend time with his grandchildren. She was working behind the scenes to facilitate family harmony. The gaslighting was extraordinary. This was the same woman who'd sat next to Harry during the Oprah interview while he trashed his family on international television. The same woman who'd allegedly briefed journalists for years about how terribly the royals had treated her. The same woman whose entire brand was built on being the victim of royal racism and institutional cruelty. And now, suddenly, she was all about family reconciliation? Lady Colin Campbell saw right through it. This wasn't a genuine change of heart. This was crisis management. The Sussexes were hemorrhaging relevance. Their professional projects were failing. The public was growing tired of their victim narrative. They needed the royal family's prestige more than ever, and Meghan was pragmatic enough to recognize that reality. But here's what made the briefing particularly insidious. By positioning herself as the supportive wife who wanted reconciliation, Meghan set up the perfect trap. When the reconciliation inevitably failed, and Lady C believed it would fail because Meghan would make sure it failed, who would get the blame? Not Meghan. She'd done everything right. She'd encouraged Harry. She'd wanted peace. No, the blame would fall squarely on King Charles and Prince William. They'd be the ones who refused to welcome Harry back. They'd be the cold, unforgiving royals who couldn't forgive and forget. Meghan would emerge as the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the woman who tried so hard to heal her husband's family relationships but was thwarted by the mean institution. The strategic brilliance was almost admirable if it wasn't so manipulative. Meghan was rewriting history in real time, creating a narrative where she'd always been the good guy and the royal family had always been the problem. The question everyone kept asking was simple: why doesn't Harry just leave? If the manipulation is real, if Meghan is truly deploying these psychological warfare tactics, why can't he see it? Why can't he break free? Lady Colin Campbell had the answer, and it came from deeply personal experience. She'd lived through narcissistic manipulation with her own mother. She'd watched how it destroyed people's ability to think clearly, to trust their own perceptions, to recognize reality when it was staring them in the face. And the word she used to describe the effect was chilling: befuddlement. Befuddlement is one of the classic features of narcissistic manipulation. The victim becomes so confused, so overwhelmed by the constant barrage of emotion and chaos that they lose their powers of discernment entirely. They don't know whether they're coming or going. One minute everything seems fine, the next minute they're being accused of terrible things, and 5 minutes after that it's as if nothing ever happened. Lady C described it as being bombarded with a fusillade of emotion. The narcissist doesn't engage in rational discussion or calm disagreement. They create overwhelming emotional chaos that short-circuits the victim's ability to think logically. They say anything, do anything, perform any dramatic display necessary to get their point across and maintain control. Harry was living in that maelstrom. According to Lady C's understanding of the situation, Meghan would shift between extreme emotional states to keep Harry off balance. She'd be loving and supportive one moment, then furious and accusatory the next. She'd curl up in a ball on the floor, allegedly telling Harry she needed protection, that she'd given up everything for him, that she was the biggest star in Hollywood, and now look at what her life had become. The manipulation was theatrical but devastatingly effective. Harry, who already carried deep trauma from losing his mother and years of mental health struggles, was the perfect target for this kind of psychological warfare. His vulnerabilities were well known: his guilt about Diana's death, his paranoia about the press, his desperate need to protect the people he loved from the fate that befell his mother. Meghan allegedly knew every one of these buttons and pressed them relentlessly. Lady C pointed to Thomas Markle Sr. as another example of someone who'd been utterly befuddled by Meghan's manipulation. Her own father showed signs of complete confusion and emotional devastation as a result of his interactions with his daughter. If Meghan could reduce her own father to that state, what chance did Harry have? The tragedy was that Harry should be able to see what was happening. He had intelligence, life experience, military training, but as Lady C emphasized, once you're trapped in the narcissist's maelstrom, intelligence becomes a liability. You use your own mind against yourself, rationalizing the irrational, making excuses for inexcusable behavior, convincing yourself that if you just try harder, love more, understand better, everything will be okay. But it would never be okay, because the chaos wasn't a problem to be solved. It was the entire point. So where does this leave Harry? If Lady Colin Campbell's analysis is correct, if Meghan truly is deploying these psychological warfare tactics, what hope does he have for escape? The answer is terrifying. He might not have any. Lady C believed that Meghan plays games with everyone, including Harry, and often at Harry's expense. The New York appearance, the Paris stunt, the security obsession, the fake reconciliation narrative, all of it served Meghan's purposes, while keeping Harry trapped in a cage of confusion and emotional dependency. And the most disturbing part? Not all of it was scripted. Meghan was skilled enough to wing portions of the manipulation, to improvise based on circumstances, to press buttons in real time and watch Harry crumble. The alleged strategy was working perfectly. Meghan had successfully isolated Harry from his family. She'd convinced him that the royal family was dangerous, that they couldn't be trusted, that returning to England would put his wife and children at risk. She'd positioned herself as his only ally, his only protector, the only person who truly understood him and had his best interests at heart. And every time someone tried to break through that wall, every time a family member reached out or the public questioned the Sussex narrative, Meghan allegedly manufactured a new crisis that pulled Harry back under her control. The drama was constant, the chaos unending, and Harry was left perpetually befuddled, never quite able to see the pattern, never quite able to recognize the manipulation for what it was. Even divorce might not free him. If they separated, Meghan would still have leverage through the children. She'd still be able to control access, to make demands, to position herself as the victim of Harry's instability or his family's cruelty. The game would continue, just with different rules and different stakes. Lady C's warning echoed with dark implications. This was duper's delight at its finest. Meghan wasn't just duping the world with her carefully crafted public image. She was allegedly duping Harry himself, the man she'd promised to love and honor. The psychological devastation of that betrayal, if true, was almost incomprehensible. The real question now was whether Harry would ever wake up. Would there be a moment of clarity, a breaking point where the befuddlement lifted and he saw the truth? Or would he remain trapped in this cycle forever, growing more isolated, more paranoid, more damaged with each passing year? History suggested the outlook was bleak. People who fall into narcissistic relationships often struggle for years or even decades to escape. Some never do. They remain convinced that the problem is them, that if they just tried harder or loved better, everything would be fine. And Meghan, if Lady C's analysis was accurate, would make absolutely certain Harry never figured out the truth. So here's the million-dollar question. Is Prince Harry a victim of psychological warfare, or is he a willing participant in the Sussex game? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and trust me, you won't believe what's coming next.